Hope you all have enjoyed your holidays and now ready for the online classes further. So here in this module we are going to begin with a new chapter in history, that is chapter 4, and title is Thinkers, Beliefs and Buildings. So following are the objective of this chapter.
This chapter is all about the major religious developments in the early India, focusing on Buddhism, Hinduism and Jainism. It is also examines how these religious ideas were compiled as texts and reflected in the architecture and sculptures. Vedic Sanskrit, a special kind of Sanskrit in which hymns and verses were composed. Rajasurya Yagya, a special kind of yagya in which sacrifices are performed by chiefs and kings who depended on the Brahmins to conduct these rituals. Tripitaka, 3 books of Buddhist sacred text, is called Tripitaka. Stupa, a Sanskrit word which means a heap. Stupa originated a simple semicircular mound of earth, later called Ande.
So let's begin the first topic, that is glimpse of Sanchi. Topic 1. Glimpse of Sanchi. So here, what is Sanchi? Sanchi is a name of place which is a small town in Bhopal in Madhya Pradesh. Now why the Sanchi was popular? The Sanchi was popular because of stupa, and stupa is a structure which is also called as tomb-like earthen semicircular structure which is built upon the burial site of any body. It is called as stupa, and these stupas were very popular during the time period of Buddha. So as it is assumed that when Gautam Buddha died, its all body part were being buried into the 8 different places, and these places, these tomb-like structure of semicircular is being built in that place, and they were being named as stupa. But the Sanchi stupa has a different history. The Sanchi stupa is being built by Samrat Ashoka. Around 19th century, many Europeans were interested to know about the Sanchi stupa and its fact. So they arrived in Bhopal and they took the permission of Begums and the rulers of Bhopal. Basically, Begums of Bhopal played very important role in maintaining its identity. They spent a lot of money in the preservance of these stupas. Now, the Sanchi stupa is the part of World Heritage. second topic, that is background, history of sacrifices and debate upon the sacrificial tradition. Now, as we know, in the history, first mid-millennium BCE is considered as the major turning point in the history of world. Why? Because several development, cultural development and traditional development was taking place. One of them was the sacrificial tradition. What is the sacrificial tradition? According to Vedas, we come to know that several mantras and hymns were being chanted during the performance of sacrificial tradition. They used to praise several gods and goddesses like Agni, Vayu and so on. And they used to pray for their family that they must remain safe. For their cattle they used to pray and do the sacrifice of different animals. In this way, this tradition is called as sacrificial tradition. For sacrificial tradition, basically, it is carried forward by the royal people, royal families. Later on, it became very popular in the common families as well. The head of the family basically used to perform this sacrificial tradition. Very popular sacrificial tradition which we are going to see in the video is the Rajasuya Yagya and Ashwamedha Yagya. Let us enjoy with the help of these videos.
An important part of Indian culture since dawn of civilization has been the Yagya. In fact, our ancestors' power in understanding advanced mathematics is the best understood through Yagya and its use. The Sulabh Sutra, the oldest surviving mathematical text, they exhibit an advanced understanding of geometry, fraction and exponents, written around 3000 years ago. Their primary purpose was construction of fire altar for Yagya, and the most famous Yagya was seen in the key stories in Ashwamedha Yagya, the fourth and the last of the main Yagya that successful king did in their progression to respected emperor. It was used by the rulers to prove their undisputed claim on territory. The method to conduct the Yagya is described in Yajurveda. It is a year-long endeavor, so it began with setting up a camp with fire altar and surrounding structures made with very precise measurement. A white horse of the best breed available, satisfying various conditions described in the Yajurveda's Upanishad. Then it was worshipped and released accompanied by the king's warriors to wander for a period of 1 year. The horse was to be protected at all cost, but not directed in any way. Whatever territories was traversed by the horse would belong to the king conducting the Yagya, unless a rival could dispute the king's authority by challenging the warriors accompanying the horse. Back at the camp, daily rituals will continue for the entire duration. After 1 year, if no enemy had managed to kill or capture the horse, the animal would be guided back to the camp. It would then be worshipped again, then sacrificed, and king would be declared as the undisputed ruler of all the land. By it, the 14th Parva of Mahabharata named as Ashwamedhika Parva. So it is named because this Yagya after Kurukshetra war, Lord Krishna urges Yudhishthira, the newly crowned king, to prove his sovereignty, and Arjun subsequently goes on his famous world conquest. It makes multiple appearances in Ramayana as well. When sage Vishwamitra is taking Ram and Lakshman on his ashram in Balakand, he talks to them about their ancestors. He explains how Ashwamedha horse being stolen from King Sagar's ritual led to the series of events that shaped the world and ultimately led to the king Bhagirath bringing Ganga to the earth. Then, much later, Ram conducted this Yagya in Uttarakhand, and that is the horse that was held by Love and Kush, sparking the conflict that culminates in Love and Kush in the story of Ram's court, eventually revealing they are his son. though the ages of Ashwamedha Yajna has been conducted by many Ionic kings such as Bharat, Dushyant, Puru, Parikshit and many more. A king conducting 100 successful Ashwamedha Yajna also held a special significance as that makes the conductor comparable to the Lord Indra. This is the reason Lord Indra stole the horse from King Sagar's Yajna in first place. And of course, King Mahabali was conducting his 100th Ashwamedha Yajna. When Lord Vishnu, in his 5th avatar Vaman, comes to liberate him, he also stopped King Prithu, the first ruler of earth, from doing 100th Yajna, saying it will make him arrogant. In the modern era, Ashwamedha was conducted by kings in the Gupta Empire, both Samudragupta and Kumargupta after him had currency dedicated to the Ashwamedha horses to show their success. At it, the last Ashwamedha Yajna was conducted by Raja Samai Jai Singh of Ajmer in 1741. It has been perhaps one of the most important tools for both territorial and economic expansion in our Itihas. Let us talk about another Yajna, that is Rajasurya Yajna, which was performed during the time of Mahabharata. Indian rulers Pandavas were very strong and popular for their administrative system, prosperity and peaceful environment. Yudhishthira planned to conduct a Rajasurya Yajna to maintain prosperity and happiness of Indraprastha's people. Therefore, Yudhishthira wanted to discuss this matter or plan with Sri Krishna. Sri Krishna said, "You can proceed for this Yajna, as you are the most powerful king, and after performing this king, you will be the strongest king of the world." But he reminded, Jarasandha too is very powerful king in Magadha. Then Sri Krishna suggested Yudhishthira that first he need to defeat Jarasandha, as after defeating this, he will be declared as the most powerful king in the world. Pandavas were very sure that when they will conduct Rajasurya Yajna, only Jarasandha can challenge them for war. Therefore, Bhim was asked to fight and accept this challenge against him. This war took place for 13 days and it was very tough war. Sri Krishna helped Bhim how to defeat Jarasandha with a tricky idea.
Moving towards the last topic of this module, and that is beyond worldly pleasure. This topic is totally spiritual based, where we will understand about the spread of Jainism. As we know, Jainism spread after the birth of Mahavir, but before the birth of Mahavir around 600 BCE in India, towards the northern part of India, Jainism was already existing. Mahavir is also very much popular with the name of Vardhaman. His messages and teachings were totally based upon ahimsa. According to him, stealing and greed, all these are the act of great sin. He totally followed the principle of ahimsa. He said that birth and rebirth of human being is a type of cycle where everything depends upon the good act of people. If people used to perform good act in their life, they get the chance to get and rebirth again in the form of human being. Otherwise, they get into the form of animal. Let us see few more detail and features about Mahavir and Jainism.
Mahavir is the name most commonly used to refer the Indian sage Vardhaman, who established what are today considered to be the central tenet of Jainism. According to the Jain tradition, he was the 24th and the last Tirthankara. As King Siddhartha's son, he lived as prince. However, even at that tender age, he exhibited a virtuous nature. He started engaging in meditation and immerses himself in self-contemplation. After having left behind the pleasures of worldly life, he went into the state of deep silence for a period of about 12.5 years. During this period, he learned to control his feelings and desires. For quite a long time, he went without food. His search for truth and the real virtue of life made people call him Mahavira. He praised that truth and clean living were the priorities in life, as was non-violence. Till today, Jains do not even harm a fly or mosquito. True Jains tie a cloth around their nose so as not to be breathed in or destroy living organism in the atmosphere. Live and let live. Love all, serve all. Where there is a love, there is life. Violence is suicide. Having compassion towards all living beings, hatred leads destruction. All these are the great virtues of Mahavira. Mahavira advises the humanity, do not reject the existence of the world and do not reject your existence as well. The most important principle of environment is that you are not only the element. When you do something for yourself, you must know your actions will impact the entire world. So what can an individual do? How do this action affect the rest of the world? Have compassion towards the living being. Hatred leads destruction. Just I dislike pain, so all other beings dislike pain. Aim to eliminate suffering in the world. Greed destroys everything, or greed destroys human nature. All these are some of the other points which were the part of Mahavir's teaching. Around 500 BC, Lord Mahavira, the last of the 24 Tirthankar, took his breath here in this place named Pavapuri. This is the place where Lord Mahavira achieved moksha or nivaran.
That's all in this module, dear children. Remaining topic we are going to cover in the upcoming module of this chapter. Till then, stay happy, stay connected.
Let us do one assertion type of question, and the question is, given below are two statements, one labeled as assertion A and another labeled as reason R. Assertion is, the mid-first millennium BCE saw emergence of new religion in India region. People began speculating on significance of sacrificial tradition and authority of Vedas. Here are the options. Option A, both A and R are correct and R is the correct explanation of A. Option B, A and R are correct and R is not the correct explanation of A. Option C is A is correct but R is not correct. Option D, R is correct but A is not correct. But the correct answer is both A and R are correct and R is the correct explanation of A. Now it's time to do some questionnaire. Question 1. Vardhaman come to be known as Buddha, Kalhana, Kalidas or Mahavira. Second question. 24th great teacher of Jain were known as Tirthankar, Jataks, Jinas or Vardhamans. Answer all these questions in comment. Thank you for watching.